Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on what time you're listening to this. This is the Boardroom podcast. I'm Ward 6 Alderman Ben Piper.
I'm Ward 4 Alderman Chad Wicker. How you doing, Ben?
I'm doing well. I'm not a big winter guy. Winter and me just don't mix. I like Christmas time, of course, but I don't like being cold one bit.
So you don't like the weather the last couple days, huh?
I'm not feeling it, man. I tell you what, I got plenty of coats in my house, but I know how to keep warm. But I went to the Hernando soccer game for a little bit.
Last night? Oh man, that's dedication there.
It was. I mean, the parents. I know some of the parents I sat with had like a gas-fired little mini heater in the bleachers there with them. I mean, it was with the wind chill or something must have been what it was. It was pretty cold out there.
Yeah, they got a pretty strong team this year.
They do.
So.
I think they're top 25 nationally or something. Top 10 in the state. Really good soccer team out there. A lot of seniors and talented juniors, and they got some young guys that are pretty good ball players too.
It seems like the soccer team's been really strong last 5 or 6 years. So
yeah, it's just that, man, all those competitive programs are just are really getting these kids ready to play at a high level. So
maybe we got to invest in the soccer fields.
I mean, at least have some lights on them. We need some light. It's at nighttime. Yeah, actually have a practice.
Yeah. Well, what else is going on? You want to get into this meeting?
Yeah, let's jump into it. So we had our first Hernando Board of Alderman meeting in the month of December. Last night we were recording this early Wednesday morning.
Yep.
And Tuesday night had our first meeting for the month of December. We'll touch on some of the high points. I know there's some. Yeah,
it was for one of our meetings. It really wasn't. I think it's only about 20 different things on the agenda, but
there's a couple homes that I guess needed some cleanup. I know people see those sometimes.
Yeah, I think Austin and the planning department have done a pretty good job of looking at those, and if there is an issue, addressing them and working with the property owner to get it addressed. I think both of those that was on the agenda last night are going to be demolished, I believe, at some point. So.
And what we're talking about there, if you have folks that, you got a neighbor or somebody in your neighborhood, or maybe, in a house across from your neighborhood or something like that, and that, hey, there's kudzu growing all around the house, or there's weeds that are 6 feet tall or whatever else. There's some public health and safety measures that we can take as a city to address those, but it does take time. It's not just go and you have a process of reaching out to the homeowner or the property owner, and sometimes they're not easy to reach. Got to send certified mail and all this kind of stuff, but some of those are being addressed. One of them's up there, kind of across from Winningham Estates up there on Nesbitt Road.
Nesbitt Road, and that one's on College Street.
That one's been pretty rough there.
And I think what these are, typically these are someone who's inherited this property.
Yep.
For some reason they don't live there. It's abandoned. It was grandma's old house, and so it just sits there for years and years and gets to a point of disrepair that it has to be demolished. And sometimes you got to force the people's hand,
Yeah, it's going to be they're getting cleaned up, which is a good thing.
So if they don't clean it up, we have the ability to go in and clean up ourselves and then charge them.
That's right.
Charge them a fee for that. Outside of that, those two quick things. It looked like the police department had a lot of computer equipment surplus. Some of this was some older stuff they've since got rid of. Item we talked about briefly was we finally advertised for the Andrew Miller Oak Grove and 51 roundabout
Don't
project.
do that to He don't want that.
So,
man.
Anyway, so we finally have got that out for bid. So we should have the bids back, I think, about 60-day process. And my understanding from what the mayor said, and I think Lee and them last night, that they hope to have this done by August 1st. If not, the company will receive a penalty. So that usually gets them going pretty good. On the roundabout. The next thing we talked about, Ben, I think we had a little discussion about this, was the mayor and the city clerk asked us to borrow $500,000 from the utility fund to the general fund to kind of help with cash flow. And I think you and I both had some questions about that. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, just so what we normally receive from our city clerk is what's called an ENR, expense and revenue report. And the private sector, people call them P&Ls, or profit and loss statements, to kind of give you a financial snapshot of where you're at. And so from what I had seen from our most recent ENR is that from last year's budget, we had brought forward about $2.5 million. I may be remembering that wrong, but that's what I remember seeing from our most recent E&R, right?
That's right, yeah.
On top of that, you have sales tax that comes in each month in October and November and December and so on and so forth. And that's pretty much the revenue that you have to balance your expenses. And so somehow along the line, I guess there was a bond. Is it a bond payment that was?
I believe what we learned last night was a 2012 general obligation bond that has an $800,000 payment due, I think, by the end of the month.
Okay. So the timing on that is interesting because the bond payments are due every 6 months, from what I understand.
Yes.
So I'm not really sure how that. It seems like there was an oversight. That was what
I think what the mayor indicated last night, just kind of listening to him and listening to the.
I don't want to speak for him, but I'm just trying to say what he said.
Yeah, and there's nothing discouraging. I think that he indicated when he did the budget, he didn't realize that some of these bond payments were going to be due in the fall time before we get our property taxes, which is the bulk of our revenue, and so he's going to take a really hard look at that next year with the CAO. What's Mr.
Our finance director, Ed Espedia.
Mr. Ed, and make sure that we take care of this on the front end, so we don't, because I think it's more of a perception than reality. But I think that when people see that we're borrowing money from one fund to pay the other, it seems like we don't have our finances in order, and I don't think that's the case. I think it's just we simply, like most cities, have a cash flow problem because we get all our revenue in the months of February and March. And we also did something this year that we haven't really done before, and do some paving in the fall, so that probably led to some of this as well.
That was about $220,000, give or take.
So, and that I had some questions about it. I don't think the perception of it, that borrowing money is doesn't look good. And also, I think Ed did indicate that he thinks it's not going to quite be that much. It may be around $300,000 by the end of the day. Just depends on how much sales tax comes in.
Well, the board passed it. I know you and I were not supportive, and we have our reasons for that. And mine was that I asked when it was going to be paid back, and they said, well, whenever we get the money back in. I said that's not a plan. That's like I just didn't really see the clarity there. Didn't really understand it as much, and that it just didn't make much financial sense to me.
Right.
But I understand, like, obviously you have to have money in your account if you got stuff coming out, right? I mean, that's a basic tenet, but the timing of it just seems unusual to me. But
yeah, that's right. So it is what it is. We voted against it, but the majority of the board approved it, and so I guess they'll do whatever necessary paperwork to do that. The one positive about it, I think Alderman Miller mentioned, was when we do this, get our money from ourselves, there's no interest or anything.
That's right.
So it's just a flat money. So it's just moving money from here to there to cover your cash flow. I'm sure corporations do that all the time, but again, I think it's just a perception thing. Moving on to the Kimberly Horn. They were awarded the essentially the design services project for the MOSTF, the Mississippi Outdoor Steward Trust Fund grant for Renaissance Park, and they're going to go through that plan and get it together.
Yep. So they have worked with us fairly extensively on this grant and helping to write it. With some of our city employees, and definitely appreciate their partnership. This is going to really start to transform the Renaissance Park area, and getting access to more of that area that will be more drivable
and just so people don't know, I think Ben, that this is going to basically take the road to the ditch, not quite crossing the ditch. I think we have a disc golf course. There's going to be some outdoor space, I believe, some type
pavilion,
of pavilion, amphitheater type. I think you call it outdoor, recreational space. Some, I think, improved trails. It's already a nice trail out there, but I think they're going to improve the trails a little bit. So We were one of the first ones to receive this type. This is a new thing through the legislature they passed a couple years ago. I think Representative Kincaid, who represents Marshall County and a little bit of the eastern part of DeSoto County, is the chairman of that committee, and I think he was responsible for us getting these funds. So.
I want to say from what I remember, that fund is only about $10 or $15 million annually, and so the city getting 1.7 of it is a pretty big haul for us. I know we have to match a portion of that.
Yeah, and I think it's no secret that our long-term goal is to connect that road to Robinson Gin 251 to give another access point from the baseball fields complex and tie this all together. So this is we're going to use these funds to get to the creek, and then with something we're going to talk about in just a second on the GO bond for the parks, get it essentially across to 51 or really close. So.
And that really needs that'll help open up just everything. I mean, when that's done, whether we're using old ball fields, new ball fields, whatever it is, it'll help with traffic. When you have the 4th of July, we got the fireworks out there with
that's right.
All those events. It's going to help with just getting in and out of that place a lot easier. But yeah, that's something that's got to be done at some point.
Yeah. All right, moving on. I'm going to skip 16. 17 is kind of, I think there's been some talk on social media about, and I know some people reached out to me about, had some questions about. We approved a plan to spend or allocate the $7.5 million recreational improvement general obligation bond that we took out a couple of weeks ago, and so the plan was put out last night. I posted it to my Facebook page. I'll post it to the Boardroom Facebook page.
You put the memo out there?
Yeah, the one that Andrew. I'll pull it up real quick if you want me to.
That's what I was going to get it pulled up as well, just to run through it real quick with what.
So, but first thing I want to talk about is I know there's been some people who oppose, for whatever reason they oppose improving our park facilities. They think it's a waste of money or whatever. That we weren't transparent about this, taking out money. That's simply not true. We had been 3 or 4 public hearings about a general obligation bond.
And again, with the meeting last night, no one showed up in opposition.
Well, one gentleman who came before the meeting said he couldn't be there. I did listen to him. I don't necessarily agree with him, but he basically was, and I'm not going to mention his name, but I know him well. He mentioned that he was upset that we were borrowing money to improve the baseball complex and soccer's, and when we haven't ran sewer to his property. I think he lives on the Getwell area over there.
And honestly, I understand that frustration. I agree with him. It's just in principle, right? Mm-hmm. I agree with him in principle that the areas that we've annexed need to have sewer extended to them. I certainly advocated for and pushed for more sewer projects to the annexed areas when we had ARPA funding to do that, and was able to get some of that done, but not all of it. Yes. So you certainly try to get that done. I've advocated, personally for, using a revenue related bond from the utility fund to extend water and sewer to some of these areas, specifically the Getwell corridor, because that's going to be developed at some point. But I think that the opposing view of it is that that's going to be developed out by commercial developers at some point, or by residential developers, and when they do it, have them foot more of the bill for it rather than the taxpayers.
And he mentioned this, and I think this too, Ben, is that when we do annex the area, we're supposed to provide them services in a period of time, a reasonable period of time, but there is a clause that says, I think it's accidental circumstances or whatever, because I think he's essentially the only person that lives on that side of Getwell, I believe, this gentleman.
There's not many on that side of the road.
Anyway, he certainly understands his point, and I do understand that. I think we can do both. I think we can accomplish both. We can work to get him the sewer services and improve our baseball field. But to get back to what I was saying, the transparency thing, we have been nothing but transparent. We post every agenda on our Facebook page. We have a podcast every 2 weeks talking about the agenda. So for somebody to make the argument that we're not transparent, that's really ridiculous.
Well, and too, I think that this the past 2 years we've had priorities for different budgets, different years. I think that we have prioritized public safety for a couple budgets straight, adding police, adding firefighters, adding medics, adding ambulance. Some of those things that all cost money. Adding school resource officers.
That's right. Yeah.
We developed.
We've given pay raises to people, get our pay back in line.
We've developed a paving plan that's much more aggressive than in the past. That stuff costs money, and now that the focus has turned a little bit more towards, having park facilities that are, one, ADA compliant, which is a huge is a huge liability.
I'll be honest,
we have facilities that aren't ADA compliant.
When he mentioned that last night, I didn't even think about the baseball fields not being ADA compliant anymore. So.
Even the soccer field, the soccer complex was developed and is not ADA compliant. There's safety issues out there. We've got to get safe facilities for our kids, and it costs money. We do have within that 7.5. Here's what we're looking at: 4 baseball, softball fields with associated sports lighting. 185, 200, and 250 foot center field size fields, a restroom and concession building, asphalt parking, an access road with curb gutter sidewalks, and all of that, all in on that one's their estimated cost is over $6 million, $6.5 million to be exact. Is what they're estimating. May come in and above or below. We don't know.
And a big portion of that, I think, over $1 million of that is going to be that access road. From Robinson Gin to the proposed parking ball field area.
It's close to 2/10 of a mile, so it is a big expense there. And then we have a soccer complex improvements, lighting for the Hernando Soccer Complex, which that's actually already been bid out and awarded to the to Path Lighting, and then they're bidding it out to their subs.
We're hoping we can have that done by the spring. So
if not
definitely the fall season,
late spring, definitely for the summertime when they have those 3v3 tournaments. You could do one, more in the cooler times of the evening during the summertime potentially. Parking lot lights, lights for one pad, which is the DeSoto Family Dental Care Field. If you're familiar with that from going out there. And anybody that hasn't been out to the soccer complex, we've spent probably $500,000 on improving that complex in the last couple of years.
We've paved it,
paving, curb and gutter work.
Yeah, the fields look great. I think we're doing a lot of that internal now. So, and then the last thing on there, Ben, is we're going to do some improvements to the existing fields. And I encourage people to go back and listen to the meeting last night when Mr. Jarrett talked about. The removing the lips on the 8-ball fields and that process. That's going to be about $65,000. But we're going to remove the lips on all 8 of the old ball fields, tie the removing loop area back into the outfield and skin the area. So basically, you're going to skin that outfield area where it's developed a lip and it's kind of dangerous. So that's how quick $7 million goes when you start making improvements like this.
There's dirt work that has to be done. There's engineering. There's a lot of concrete. There's a lot of asphalt. Lighting is obviously expensive. I think just the lighting for soccer is $700,000. So again, baseball, you got 4 fields that you have to light. There are issues within the Civic Center ball fields from a standpoint of how close the fields are together, that foul balls can enter the field of play from one field to another. That it's just not, there's just some glaring issues out there. There's drainage issues that need to be addressed. So for now, the best way forward and the quickest way forward to have safe playing surfaces is to have 4 new baseball, softball fields to get things improved upon.
And we developed that master plan, and we're going to follow the master plan. Not as aggressive as we wanted to, but this is basically the first. I think the way I've been describing this is kind of half of the first phase that we initially had planned. There was some comment that the referendum we held last year for the penny for the parks demonstrated that the residents didn't want any improvements to the park facilities, and I don't agree with that. I think this from what I read from that is that the citizens didn't want us to use the revenue from restaurant tax. They want us to work within our budget, and that's what we're doing. I know there's the rumors going around that this is because we took a bond out, it's going to increase property taxes and stuff. They wouldn't let us take a bond out if we couldn't afford it, just like a bank.
That's right.
we'll be able to work within our means to move towards this process, and hopefully have some nice areas out there in the next 18 months or so with the baseball field. The soccer field, you'll see that right away. In the baseball complex, you'll see that the existing complex. He'll have that done by the spring. So.
Well, and then the timing on all this. So when people say, "Well, all right, so we got new fields coming. When's that going to be?" I talked with some of the folks at Kimley Horn this morning. At the earliest, you're talking fall ball 2025.
Yeah.
Okay. If we can get construction going by fall 2024. So basically, construction will take a year, more or less. So the goal, I think that would be a good goal potentially for the city and the citizens to have in mind as we're moving forward. So, it isn't something that happens overnight. It has to be engineered. It has to be designed and bid out, and we have to make sure that we're being good stewards of these dollars, because they are a significant financial investment for the city and for the kids of this community.
Sure. I think we addressed that pretty good. The last thing you want to talk about this railroad ordinance. I think you had mentioned something about this. I think this has been going around town a little bit.
What are we going to do if we actually get something going with this? Are we going to have to change our lead-in song?
I think
are we going to fix the waiting on a train problem?
May not have to worry about the train. I'll be honest. I'm not. I've looked at some things myself, and of course, I'm not an attorney. I just don't think there's a lot of teeth with the railroad that we can enforce. But we'll see where we're going to.
Essentially, looking at this, I mean, everybody knows you have to wait on a train sometimes in Hernando. You get stuck for 20, 30 minutes, sometimes an hour. I've heard people say they have to wait an hour, and people are concerned about the emergency services. They're concerned about, just the general flow of business within the city when these train stoppages happen. So, we had our attorney, kind of surface level look into this, and we're approving him to look deeper into it to say, is there a local ordinance that we can pass that would restrict the hours of operation for when loading and unloading can occur for the railroad companies. I think that the answer that's been given in the past a lot of times is, well, the federal government regulates the railways. Well, the federal government regulates Highway 51 and the interstates and all this kind of stuff, but you can still locally you can still restrict the hours of operation for inbound and outbound deliveries for 18-wheelers. Yeah. So this is that's kind of the similar analogy I think that I would potentially put on that, for local business. Now, I don't think anybody wants to affect local business. Alderman Miller mentioned that point. No. We don't want to hurt local business in any way, but being able to get around your city, and one of the main arteries of our city is Commerce Street. Yeah,
when that train comes through, it's very cumbersome to the traffic. I mean, it's just I work over behind the jail location there, and when it comes down, you're stuck. You can't get anywhere. You have to go all the way basically down to Vinson to come back up, and so it's tough. But
I honestly try to use the back roads to get to wherever I'm going.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I know that the previous mayor. I mean, I think maybe our current mayor have reached out to the railroad company that owns the railroad. I believe it's Grenada Railways or whatever, and they're just reluctant to help us. If the train would come by at 10 o'clock at night, not 10 o'clock in the morning, I think that resolves all our issues. But
honestly, if it was 8 o'clock,
yeah,
I don't know how many of y'all get out after 7 o'clock at night in Hernando. Yeah. But the town's pretty much shut down by 8:30 at night.
Until like on a school day, not till about 6:37 is really traffic picks back up. So, but I'm sure they have reasons why they do that. I'm sure it may not fit into their business model or whatever. So, anyway.
We'll just have to see what comes from it. We got to hear more from our attorney on that, with the possibility of a local ordinance to help with the train situation. And it may be something where the ordinance gets put into place and people don't see an immediate improvement, or they see no improvement at all. But we certainly want to investigate into it, because it is one of those things that is a concern.
Yeah. All right. Well, that really covers our meeting. Ben, you want to talk about our guests we got on tonight or today?
We got our guest speaker coming on here, just recently elected State Representative Rodney Hall.
That's right.
So he represents a portion of DeSoto County, but not necessarily a lot of Hernando.
No.
But we wanted to bring him on hear about some of his legislative thoughts for his first session that's going to be coming up this spring.
Yeah.
Let's bring on Representative Rodney Hall. All right, Chad, we are bringing in Rodney Hall, representative-elect here in DeSoto County.
District 20, I believe, is that right?
That is correct,
Yeah.
District 20.
Which is, I think, Greenbrook area, is that in the kind of north?
It does. So if you look at the left-hand side is Highway 51, Colonial Hills. Of course, State Line Road is the northern boundary. And then the east is Highway 78 over in Olive Branch West. And down the south is Rasco until you get over towards the Olive Branch side.
You had a lot of houses, doors knock on, didn't you?
Sure did, sure did.
That's a lot of people live in that area.
Try to hit them
there.
all.
That's a lot of people there.
If I didn't make it, I'll be coming back around.
So, Rodney, you want to tell us a little about yourself? You know, we are kind of, I guess, a Hernando-centered podcast. We're both aldermen, but you know, I think it's important that we were able to get some new leadership in our House and Senate legislator, and so we plan to bring everybody on at one point. So you're the first one. So do you want to kind of talk about yourself, your background, and then maybe some of the stuff you want to achieve while you're in there?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, one thing that I really, man, it just warms my heart. It gives me so much eagerness and optimism as we get ready to shape down for the legislative session is the work that our cities and our county has done for the past few years. I mean, DeSoto County is such a close-knit county. When you look at our cities, South Haven, Olive Branch, Horn Lake, of course, Hernando, and you know, all of our cities work so well together. And so I'm very optimistic about it. Now, for me personally, you know, I'm from South Haven, over in the West End, the old South Haven, the original South Haven.
OG, huh?
Oh yeah, and so I live over in Carriage Hills, raising my family where I was raised, and then of course I have Olive Branch West as well. But again, I'm extremely encouraged with the group that we have shaping up to go down into Jackson, then also being able to work with our local leaders here that are going to continue to address the issues on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. Do you have any, Rodney? Do you have any priorities that you're looking at?
Yeah, you know, what I have really tried to do, especially since the primary in August, you know, I had a lot of time between August and January with not having a general opponent. And so what my number one objective has been is to become a domain expert in all things DeSoto County. And so I have placed the emphasis on not only understanding and seeing all of DeSoto County, but seeing where the issues are and then start to look for the opportunities that can be addressed in the interim. And so I have talked with leaders all across our county as far as committees and projects that are required and that need some redressability. Of course, I-55 is a big one. The water system over for Horn Lake and South Haven is a big one. Really the growing pains, right, from all the growth that we have. Of course, crime is, you know, we have a neighbor that isn't doing so well just north of us. I share a border with them, with
Sure.
Shelby County. And so I want to make sure that our communities continue to, you know, grow and thrive. But, you know, we have to be safe. We have to be smart about it and continue to set the conditions for that easy transition and that growth and economic wealth.
I think one of the things that people have heard that follow state politics closely is that Mississippi's in a better place economically than it has been in a long time. There's, you know, surpluses, which is a rare word that you ever hear. But, you know, how do you think the state can put that to work in a way for taxpayers individually? Not so much in projects, you know, but you know, is there some way that people can feel individual impacts to that you would be behind, I guess?
Yeah, well, I can tell you one is a very easy one, and it probably affects us more than it does anybody else in the state because of our neighbor to the north, but it's the income tax. Our income taxes should be cut.
Yeah.
It's that simple. I do think that families better know how to spend their money than the federal government does. And when we have the ability to do it, and I think, you know, I haven't looked at all the numbers, but I think that we're probably in that position to where we need to start looking at cutting the income tax because, you know, with that said, you know, and a lot of people like to take a single-handed approach. Like, you cut the income taxes, we're going to lose this much. But what will we gain from it? That's the question that's not being asked. And when you look at our neighbors to the north, I know just from my time working on the Hill with Congressman Kelly, there are businesses, there are business owners, there are homeowners that will happily leave Shelby County, Memphis, Tennessee, and come down to DeSoto County. And with that comes a larger tax base, with more economic opportunities for our citizens here. And so I think we need to take a nuanced approach and make sure that when we cut the state income tax, which I think is doable, that we're also putting into the equation who is coming and how much does that help add to the coffers that we already have.
Let's talk about job creation, economic development. I know you mentioned, because I-55 is a big part of that and widening that, but put that to the side. But as far as economic development for DeSoto County, we have good problems, right? I mean, that's the way Chad and I think about it, is that people want to, locate to DeSoto County. So do you feel like that puts us in a position where, we've got more kind of chips to play with,
right?
A little bit more. Hey, you're close to the FedEx hub. You're close to this. We've got a workforce. All these things. So when we are at the table, when we're at the negotiation table with a business wanting to come in, we've got a lot more to sell than a lot of other parts of the state. Yeah,
and one of the biggest hurdles that companies look at is workforce.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have enough bodies with the right background and the capability to support this business? And while the Delta has that problem and other parts of the state of Mississippi has that problem, we don't. We simply have a ton of talented people. We have a ton of talented folks that are able to fill workforce needs. And so that does make us a major player, and it does give us a bigger say when we're competing for jobs and workforce development projects and stuff like that for our economy.
So talk about your background a little bit. I know that you've gone door to door. You've probably given this 30 to 60 second spiel to people thousands of times now. But for our listeners who don't know you as well, what's your background other than just growing up in the South Haven area? And what do you do now and that kind of thing?
Well, I'm a Christian. I'm proud to be a Christian. I think that it is important for our communities that we have faith in our communities. And I'm also a soldier. I will tell anybody, and I'm sure thousands of people have heard this already, I've been a soldier my entire life. I joined when I was 17 years old. My dad, he was my recruiter. My daddy was a soldier. He went to Desert Storm. My grandfather was a soldier. He went to Vietnam. I come from a patriotic family, and I'm a patriot. And I'm very proud of that. And I think it's important that we bring service back into our communities as well. And, those are two things that I really lean on when I start looking at the issues that need to be addressed in Mississippi. I'm also an attorney, and so I do feel that it's important that we take nuanced approaches towards the issues that we have. All those things that kind of make up your character, your person, your DNA, I think is important when you start looking at the issues of tomorrow.
Wow. Yeah, I'd vote for you. I mean, that was pretty good. That's way better than what I normally say. So,
Rodney, I don't know how the House does it. I know I read somewhere you had a caucus meeting or something recently. Do you have any idea what committees you're going to be on, or has you made those assignments yet? Or
No, we haven't had that conversation yet. Of course, every legislature will go down there and we get a wish list that we put together. I'm not sure if that's going to happen sometime in December or at the very start of the session in January. One thing I would like to see is that, us as a delegation, since we have so many folks going in, and, we have some good members that are going down there, I want us to kind of get together and see if we can provide enough coverage kind of across the chamber. Sure. Because we all bring different talents and we all have different experiences. And so if we can get together and try to, say maybe this is a good fit for you, this is your passion, this is good for DeSoto County, try to lay out the field so we have good coverage across the chamber.
We had, I think, Senator Sparks on, and he was mentioning maybe campaign finance would be a big issue. Do you have any position on that? Or
No. My first delving into campaign finances, of course, as a candidate. And when I started looking up the rules, I was like, man, there's not a lot of rules. But, I'm very curious to see. I haven't looked at what other states do. Of course, I know what the federal government does. Having worked on the Hill And so I'm looking to see, what other states are doing, what's successful, what hasn't been successful.
I think this is my personal opinion. I think there needs to be more teeth into the legislation. I think it's not clear who is supposed to enforce financial rules, and so I think that's something maybe y'all could look at. It's just my advice.
It definitely is something that needs to be looked at. I look at just take the governor's race. Most recently, there was so much money dumped to that race. I mean, it just blows my mind. And a lot of it was, actually most of it was outside money coming on, Brandon Presley's side. And so that has effects. That has effects on your election. Of course, elections have consequences, so it has effects on your communities. And so, it needs to be looked at.
And I can tell you from, and I've told my story a little bit in the past, my home state is Georgia. And I would have never imagined that both of our U.S. senators were from the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
But it's because, don't wait for a second now, it's because outside money came into that state and supported Democratic candidates. Because if you would have told me Herschel Walker is going to run as a Republican and not win an election in the state of Georgia, I would have told you were nuts.
Yeah.
But it's because outside money comes in and certainly influences things. So we're not immune to it here in Mississippi, and I think that's an excellent point. But talk a little bit about we talked about some positions and that sort of thing, and you talked about your call to service. And you have a life of service for sure. You actually campaign, and then you end up winning. And I think for myself and possibly for Chad too, one, you have the feeling you're excited, that sort of thing, because you worked and you accomplished something. But then there's also this immediate feeling of a higher responsibility. Can you talk about that some, and just sort of this how surreal it is to kind of go through this process?
Yeah. Again, I was very blessed to have a great mentor and former boss in Congressman Trent Kelly. And so having served up under him for the past few years, you really get to, one, I already was working on Mississippi problems, and looking for solutions to Mississippi problems. But then also to see the ability that you have, right? The ability to really make a change in a community, in a county, in a state, with good policies, good legislation. And so when I won, and August 8th was a great night. August 9th, I woke up with a little bit of a headache, but woke up nevertheless, and was able to really start getting after it. And a lot of it is a spillover of the issues that I saw when I was on the Hill, but then also the stuff that I gathered from knocking on doors. And what I did was, and I'm a numbers guy. I take a lot of notes. I was taught that in the Army, and I took notes of every conversation that I had and the issues that people felt that were affecting them the most. And so right now I have an enumerated list of things that I want to address when we get down to the legislature as soon as possible. And so, that's kind of the blessing piece of it, right? I kind of I'm not walking in there completely blind. I'm not walking in there not fully knowing what to expect. There will be changes. There will be differences between the federal legislature and the state legislature. And I understand I will still be drinking from a fire hose. There's a learning curve. But to have that kind of just a little step ahead, having worked in public policy for some time, I'm very encouraged about it moving forward.
When you think back to your time with Congressman Kelly and just a congressional staffer, I mean, you're working 18, 20 hours a day. You don't sleep a whole lot. There's a lot. What's one of your favorite stories? I guess from that time, it could be funny, it could be serious.
Yeah.
What's one of your favorite stories from that time?
Leadership matters, and politicians get a very bad rap. A lot of it because of what you see on TV. And then, of course, the personal attacks and the attack ads, they don't help. But when you find someone that has true leadership and earnestness for their state, for their people, for where they come from, that's very refreshing. And, one of my fondest memories of working on the Hill is I'm trying to make sure I should share this or not, but we would take a vote, and I was Congressman Kelly's legislative director, and so I would help with the vote recs. I would do all the research with the rest of my team, and we'll go through all the bills, find out if there are any issues with it. Is it good? Should we support it? Does it help Mississippi? And we would give him the vote recs. He'll go down and he'll go vote. And then afterwards, work is essentially over, right? The votes are done. Everybody's going home. And the congressman, he will sit there and we'll just sit there and we'll chat. And we'll just sit there for hours sometimes and just kind of talking. And sometimes it's serious. Sometimes it's not serious. Sometimes it's about football. And sometimes it's about, what issues need to be addressed moving forward for Mississippi. And, that when you find someone like that, a leader who cares that much to invest his time, not just in developing his people, but then also making sure that we're all on the same page for our community. I think that was I was like, wow, I just hadn't seen that from a public figure before.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting to hear that because it's, one, I think I've had the pleasure of sitting down with Congressman Kelly, and it was at, Coleman's barbecue back in the day, right? So, and just sitting one-on-one over like a sausage biscuit, and it's just like, he could be just anybody that lives in Hernando. He's very, very personable, and is very down to earth as far as that goes. And I think, to your point, the media kind of builds up these folks to be like, they're untouchable. You can't ask them any questions. Right. They're totally out of touch with what's going on. Yeah. But when it really comes down to it, I mean, they're here for the people.
And that's one thing that I want to bring forward from just my experiences working with him as a mentor is I want people to feel that they can reach me and that they can always hold me accountable. So many people put politicians up on a pedestal, and I think the pyramid should be reversed. I mean, you're a public servant. You work for the people.
That's right.
You serve the people, and you shouldn't be above the people. You should be below them, helping them with the needs and things in the community. And so one goal that I have is really outreach to the voters, outreach to our communities, and ensuring that they're understanding that I want their voice in my head when I'm going down there to Jackson. I'm there to serve them. I'm not there to serve myself. And even though I'm working on problems for Mississippi, DeSoto County is always first. And so I want to make sure that DeSoto Countyans know that they can reach me and that they have a voice in the Capitol.
We're sitting here with Representative-elect Rodney Hall, a Republican from DeSoto County, South Haven guy, born and bred, I guess, and raised up there, and now going down to Jackson to represent the DeSoto County delegation.
Rodney, you have any kids?
I do.
How's your kids going to take it with you being gone quite a bit?
But it's funny. I kept the same schedule as the congressman, so I would fly up when we had votes in session, then I would fly back home on the weekend and, of course, stay down in DeSoto County when we're on a district work week. And so my commute hasn't changed at all. It's just a different mode of travel. It's 3 hours up there. Now it's 3 hours down to Jackson.
So they're used to it, I see.
They are. And then, of course, I got a couple of deployments under my belt, always active duty. So this is probably a change of pace is a little bit slower than what I'm used to, which is nice because I don't have to hop on a flight and leave Mississippi every week.
Well, you have any closing thoughts?
Yeah, we certainly appreciate your time. There's only so many hours in the day, so appreciate you sitting down with us and sharing kind of what some of those priorities are. And hopefully we can have you back in during the summertime once the first legislative session has concluded, and you can tell us about how it is for a freshman representative to come in and
we want our exit
handle all these
we
things.
want our exit fix, man.
Yeah. Well, and, one thing that I have I campaigned on. It's something that's really in my heart and something that I continue to try to push the needle on is the outreach piece and finding the issues where they are. I understand that just because I won an election does not make me the smartest guy in the room, or does it mean that I have all the solutions to all of our problems. That comes through the partnerships with the leaderships we have at the local level, but then also with the citizens. And one thing that just kind of blew my mind is that there was no system in order to reach out to your voters, your constituents, to find their problems, catalog it, and then start to work on those issues. And so I recently launched a website, rodneyhall.ms, focus purely on DeSoto County and finding the issues down at the community level, the state, the street level, the school level, the household level. So that stuff can matriculate up, and so we can find redressability for it. That is the number one job of a public servant, in my opinion, is to serve the people. And that is what I'm trying to set the conditions for, is that DeSoto County is always first and that we have a larger say at the table, but then we're also addressing the problems at bay for today and for tomorrow.
Excellent, excellent, good stuff. Well, we
Thank you.
certainly appreciate your time. This is Representative Rodney Hall representing DeSoto County down in Jackson for the next 4 years. Truly a life of service, a servant-hearted leader that will be representing us down there. So we appreciate his time. Chad, what else we got?
I think that's it, man.
All right, we're gonna have hopefully one more episode before Christmas, maybe.
One more, yeah.
If we can.
If you can fit it in, you're the one that's always busy.
I know.
I got a lot of time on my hands lately.
I don't. Well, I'll try to squeeze it in between a round of golf and trying to make a sales call somewhere around here. We'll make it happen one way or another. But for now, I'm Ben Piper. Chad Wicker is a Boardroom Podcast. We'll talk to you next time.